truly believe that most covers are absolutely unnecessary, and especially in metal. And yet still, there are some metal bands who were able to take someone else's songs and make them truly sound like their own. So today, let's take a look at the best of those. Here you go. In 1979, on one of the two albums released that year, Judas Priest recorded a cover which would eventually become one of their trademark tunes. Originally released by Fleetwood Mac in 1970 as a standalone single, The Green Manalishi with a two-prong crown was written by the band's founder Peter Green during his final months with Fleetwood Mac. And at that time, Green was struggling with heavy LSD use and becoming increasingly disillusioned with fame and money, and rather unhappy with his bandmates. And so, according to Green, the Green Manalishi represented money itself, something devilish that may corrupt your soul.
Leaving me here, just trying to keep from following you.
And so Judas Priest first recorded their interpretation of that song on their 1979 album Killing Machine. But interestingly enough, they didn't actually release it on Killing Machine, and released it only on the US version of that album, known to all the Americans as Hell Bent for Leather. And their version completely transformed the original. The band slightly increased the tempo, added that trademark twin guitar attack, and turned a psychedelic blues rock song into one of the defining heavy metal anthems of that era, which pretty much everyone agrees today is so recognizable as a Judas Priest song that most people around the world actually know it only as such. Is that not many people actually know, including some of the Judas Priest fans, that Judas Priest actually recorded that song twice. As nearly 20 years later, Judas Priest revisited the song once again, and in 1998 they re-recorded it with Tim Ripper Owens on vocals, releasing that version as a B-side to their Bullet Train single, and which later on appeared on some of the selected editions of Demolition. Oh, and by the way, guys, as always, I'll be leaving all the links to the songs I'm talking about here in the pinned comment, so you don't have to actually look there. But nevertheless, going to the second one. The Kinks' You Really Got Me was a cornerstone song for the further development of rock and metal music. Released by the Kinks in 1964, the song is widely considered as one of the foundations of hard rock. Dave Davis' heavily distorted guitar sound and simple but incredibly powerful riff influenced generations of guitar players and helped shape what would eventually become hard rock and heavy metal years later. And 14 years later, Van Halen chose You Really Got Me as the lead single to their debut studio record. And pretty much right away, it became a huge radio hit, introducing Eddie Van Halen's revolutionary guitar playing to the world. Yet, interestingly enough, Eddie himself wasn't actually too thrilled about it. He later admitted that he wanted the band's first single to be an original song, while producer Ted Templeman insisted on releasing the cover instead. And Dave Davis himself wasn't actually too enthusiastic about it either, once joking that Eddie actually played better when he was drunk, although I'm more than sure that this was, of course, just a drunk joke. Although Kiss are often remembered for their spectacular stage shows, they also did actually write some of the remarkably heavy songs. And one of the darkest was God of Thunder, written by Paul Stanley for the 1976 album Destroyer, but ultimately handed over to Gene Simmons, whose demon persona made it the perfect soundtrack for his blood-spitting stage act. And as we all know, no matter what you actually think about Kiss, but one thing is absolutely true, is that pretty much every one of your favorite musicians was actually inspired by them in one way or another. And one of the many young musicians inspired by Kiss was actually Chuck Schuldiner. And as a lifelong fan of the band, he paid tribute to them by recording God of Thunder during the Human Sessions in 1991. The song originally appeared as bonus track on the Japanese edition of the album before becoming available worldwide on later reissues. And to this very day, I actually believe that it is one of the best interpretations of a Kiss song recorded by a metal band. Very few songs are as instantly recognizable as Simon and Garfunkel's The Sound of Silence. Originally written by Paul Simon and first released as an acoustic recording in 1964, it wasn't until the electric version came out the following year that the song became a worldwide hit, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and launching Simon and Garfunkel's career to superstardom.
That voices never share.
And more than 50 years later, Disturbed accomplished something that very few bands managed to do. Completely reimagined that hit without losing its emotional core. And instead of turning it into a heavy metal anthem, they went the opposite direction, creating a dramatic symphonic rock ballad built around David Dramer's powerful vocal performance. And that cover topped Billboard Hard Rock Digital Songs and mainstream rock charts and became Disturbed's highest charting song on the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 42. Yet perhaps the biggest compliment came from Paul Simon himself, who publicly praised the performance, calling it a wonderful interpretation of his classic.
And the people bowed and prayed.
Released in 1970 as their first single and the opening song from Deep Purple in rock, Speed King was also Ian Gillan's first song with Deep Purple. Gillan later admitted that he deliberately filled the lyrics with references to classic rock and roll artists like Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and Little Richard. And this fast, aggressive, and uncompromising track instantly became one of the defining tracks of the band's Mark II lineup and one of the first and the most influential heavy metal songs on the planet. And so when Primal Fear recorded their debut album in 1998, Speed King was the perfect choice to pay tribute to one of their biggest influences. And although the band had only one guitarist at that time, they invited Gamma Ray mastermind and former Helloween guitarist Kai Hansen to perform the lead guitar parts. As come on, if you're going to cover a song that helped invent heavy metal, Kai Hansen on guitar can never hurt to do that. Guys, super quick, just wanted to point out that if you still haven't subscribed to the channel, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing right now. Let's continue building this amazing heavy metal community together. Blind Guardian's Hansi Kirsch has often named Freddie Mercury among his greatest vocal influences, and Queen's ambitious approach to songwriting would later inspire Blind Guardian's own layered composition. And that influence became especially obvious on their 2002 album A Night at the Opera, whose title itself pays tribute to Queen's legendary 1975 album. But Blind Guardian's admiration started much earlier. In 1992, they recorded their own version of Queen's emotional ballad Spread Your Wings for Somewhere Far Beyond, before bringing it back once again on their 1996 compilation The Forgotten Tales. And here's the thing, guys, I usually hate covers on Queen. No, seriously, I actually believe that Queen is such a unique band that covering it simply doesn't work. Except for this one time. And you know why? Because in my opinion, Blind Guardian somehow were actually able to make the song sound like a Blind Guardian song. And that, my friends, is a rarity when it comes to covering Queen.
Come on, honey.
Few songs have been covered as many times as Bob Dylan's Knockin' on Heaven's Door. Written for the 1973 film Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, the song quickly became one of Dylan's signature compositions and one of the most frequently covered songs in rock history. And among those who gave it a new life were actually Guns N' Roses. They first recorded the song for the soundtrack of the 1990 movie Days of Thunder, and a slightly revised version appeared the following year on Use Your Illusion 2. The band would go on to perform it countless times live, including the legendary Freddie Mercury tribute concert at Wembley Stadium in 1992. And well, once again, we're entering the cluster of, well, this has been done many times, but somehow you were able to pull it off. Well, here's the thing. Somehow, Guns N' Roses were actually able to pull it off and make it sound like their own song, making the list of the greatest covers ever made. And once again, just like with Queen and Bob Dylan, there is yet another band which has been covered so many times that, in all honesty, hearing a cover on it today just makes you cringe. But at the same time, Helloween were somehow able to make a cover on ABBA and make it actually sound like a Helloween song. And although this band of course made gazillion covers throughout the years, including a wonderful cover on Jean-Michel Jarre's Magnetic Fields. Given this episode is dedicated to the covers that the bands were able to make sound surprisingly like their own, in my opinion, their cover on Lay All Your Love on Me does deserve to be in this list. Oh, another metal cover on ABBA that, in my opinion, actually does deserve some praise is the one done by Germany's Vance. Band leader Olaf Lang has often spoken about admiring ABBA's songwriting just as much as the work of classical composers like Beethoven or Vivaldi. And maybe that's why one of the highlights of the band's early days is their rendition of The Winner Takes It All, ABBA's emotional 1980 hit, which they were able to sound just like it was written specifically for a power metal band. Originally released by Michael Cimbello in 1983, Maniac became a worldwide hit after appearing in the soundtrack of Flashdance. And so when Omnium Gathering recorded their version in 2023, they decided to embrace the song's cinematic roots and mix it with melodic death metal. And thus for the music video, they invited acclaimed Finnish ballerina Suvi Honkanen, creating a direct connection to the film's story about a young dancer chasing her dreams. And the result was a surprisingly natural combination of melodic death metal, pop, and ballet. Long before it became one of the most recognizable songs ever written, Immigrant Song was actually inspired by a rather unexpected event. Released in 1970 on Led Zeppelin III, the song was born after the band's trip to Iceland. Their concert was almost cancelled because of a civil servant strike, but students from the University of Iceland stepped in to organize the show, turning what could have been a disaster into an unforgettable experience. And Robert Plant later on drew inspiration from that journey, filling the lyrics with references to Viking history and mythology. Just like countless other metal bands, Dark Angel actually grew up on Led Zeppelin. And in 1989, the American Thrashers recorded their own version of Immigrant Song for Leave Scars, an album that saw the band move toward a more technical and progressive sound. And their interpretation is even more aggressive than the original, and noticeably shorter, trimming Led Zeppelin's 2.5-minute classic down to just 1 minute and 47 seconds. And somehow still made it work. Iron Maiden had always had a knack for choosing rather unexpected B-sides. And That Girl is one of the best examples of such. The song originally opened the 1984 debut album by British melodic hard rock band FM, and instantly enough, there was actually a connection between those two bands. Before joining Iron Maiden, Adrian Smith had performed That Girl live together with the drummer Nico McBrain, its co-writer Andy Barnett, and several other musicians in the short-lived project titled The Entire Population of Hackney.
Can't you see she's using you? That girl.
And so Iron Maiden were looking for a B-side for the 1986 Stranger in a Strange Land. The choice wasn't actually that random. The band slightly reworked both the melody and the lyrics to better suit Bruce Dickinson's voice, giving the song a distinctly Maiden feel. Interestingly, FM themselves also had strong ties to the new wave of British heavy metal, as bassist Merv Goldsworthy and drummer Pete Diop had both played in Samson, although Diop joined just a few months after Bruce Dickinson left the band. But still, the bottom line is here that I'm actually one of those people, and I know you're gonna hate me for this, but I actually don't really like most of the covers Iron Maiden do on other bands. Like, seriously, I have no idea why. And if you ask me which cover Iron Maiden did the best of all, in my opinion, it would definitely be That Girl. Simply because of how Iron Maidenish it actually sounds.
That girl. That girl. That girl.
And here, as always, a huge shout out and a thank you to all my patrons and all of the YouTube channel members and everyone who purchased... Oh, wait. Metal Pilgrim merch from all around the world. Guys, honestly, it is thanks to your support I'm actually able to release these videos. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. And if you would like to order some Metal Pilgrim merch to rock at your next metal show, just know that you can do so via a link in the description to this video. And talking about the legends recording songs of other legends. Well, few metal bands did as many covers as Metallica did in their career. No, seriously, we could write a special episode on just Metallica alone. But there are a couple of covers that I feel like are absolutely exceptional. And among those is of course one of the biggest Garage Inc. hits, Whiskey in the Jar. And although the song itself is a traditional Irish folk ballad dating back several centuries, Metallica's version follows the arrangements made famous by Thin Lizzy in 1972, turning it into one of the band's biggest crossover hits. And another standout on that album is of course Queen's Stone Cold Crazy. Originally released in 1974 on Sheer Heart Tag, the song is often cited as one of the earliest recordings to anticipate thrash metal, thanks to its incredible speed and aggressive riffing. And thus it was only fitting that one of thrash metal's biggest bands would eventually record a cover on it. Which I just realized is another cover on Queen that I actually like. Joe Jackson released Got the Time on his 1979 debut album Look Sharp, but despite becoming a fan favorite, the song wasn't a major commercial success. Yet everything changed including for him in 1990, when Anthrax decided to turn it into a high-energy thrash metal anthem for Persistence of Time. And it was their version that became one of the band's signature songs and introduced the track to an entirely new audience. Yet, although Joe Jackson appreciated the attention, and once again, although it was the Anthrax version that actually made it into a hit, and I'm more than sure made him quite a lot of money, he wasn't actually too impressed by it. He later joked that Anthrax version played much slower than his original, sounded clumsy and lumping. Yet in my opinion, it is actually one of the best songs Anthrax have ever recorded, and come on, if you ever heard it live, you definitely know what I'm talking about. And to close the list, we have one song that is actually a rather surprising fit for this list. I'm more than sure that for many people. But here's the thing, few metal bands embrace their national identity quite like Moonspell. Portuguese history, mythology and culture have always been deeply woven into the band's music, so it was only natural that they would eventually pay tribute to one of Portugal's most respected musical acts. As on the Japanese edition of their 2001 album Darkness and Hope, Moonspell included cover of Os Senhores da Guerra by Madre Deus, the acclaimed folk ensemble whose music has become synonymous with modern Portuguese culture. And once again, since this episode is not really only about good covers or the best covers, but rather about covers on which the bands were actually made the song sound like their own in the best possible manner, I definitely think that the Moonspell version of this track does deserve to be in this list. And here we could have closed this list. And we actually should have. Yet there is one extra song that we simply have to include on it, as in my opinion it is one of the greatest covers, if not the greatest cover ever recorded by a metal band. And although each band on this list had only one section dedicated to it, who, if not the metal gods, would deserve an extra one? As here's the thing, Judas Priest actually did not make that many covers in their career, but almost each and every one of those that they actually did are extraordinary. And some cover songs become so closely associated with the band that many fans forget they're actually covers. And Judas Priest's version of Diamonds and Rust is definitely one of those songs. And here's the thing, I actually dedicated a special episode to the evolution of this song, including the John Baez version, so I'm not gonna go into the details of it in this video, but definitely check out that other video after watching this one. Yet what I simply have to point out in this episode is that Judas Priest were somehow not just able to make it sound like a Judas Priest song, which they definitely did all the way back in the 1970s, but even more so, they were actually able to do so not once, not twice, but several times throughout their career. As in case you guys missed it, on pretty much every tour, Judas Priest reimagined this song once again, every time making it sound completely different, yet unmistakably Judas Priest-like. And that's for, in my opinion, Diamonds and Rust deserve to top this list. But anyways, which of these covers are your favorite ones, and which do you think should have made this list? Please let us know in the comments, as well as whether you want me to release an episode on the worst metal covers ever made. But for now, thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and we'll prevail. Slava Ukraini!